Okay, so I want to welcome everybody to the Succah. I want to explain to you just very briefly what it is that we're doing. It's Hoshana Rabbah night, which is really officially the end of Sukkot. You know, this is the end of the Yom Noraim, the last day. Or for people from Chutz L'Aretz, the 2 days of Yom Tov, Hoshana of Simchas Torah, Shmini Atzeres, Simchas Torah is really another Yom Tov. It's really a different Chag. Right? That's why in the last day on Shmini Atzeres we're going to make another Shechianu. Right? Everybody realize this? On the last day of Pesach, right? Pesach has 2 days of Yom Tov in the beginning and 2 days in the end. In the beginning of Yom Tov we make a Shechianu, but on the last day of Pesach we don't say Shechianu because it's not a separate Yom Tov. It's really part of Pesach. It's just the last day of Pesach is also Kadosh. When it comes to Sukkot, it's not like that. Sukkot is the same length of Pesach. It's the full 7 days. Right, and the last day Sukkot is right now. It's Hoshana Rabbah. Shmini Atzeres is a new Chag. It's a new Yom Tov. And you have to make sure when you're davening in Shmona Esrei, first of all we say Shechianu because it's its own Yom Tov. And when you're davening in Shmona Esrei, you have to say, V'yom Hashmini Chag HaAtzeres Hazeh. You can't, if you say V'yom Chag HaSukkot Hazeh, very big shiloh if you're even Yotzei B'diavad, if you're Mekayim your tefillah, because it's not any longer Sukkot. Right? This is really the last day of Sukkot. This is the last day we sit in the Sukkah. In Chutz L'Aretz on Shmini Atzeres we sit in the Sukkah, but that's only because it's still a suffix. Maybe it's still Sukkot, right? The whole way that the 2 days of Yom Tov work, the whole way it works in Chutz L'Aretz is that we do 2 days because it's as if one of the days is a suffix, right? You guys are you familiar with the way that it's set up, right? The way that it used to be. Should I go over this for a second? It's good to go over? Yeah, let me just go over this because it's interesting. It comes out very interesting and important halacha when it comes to sitting in the sukkah. The way it works is like this, right? Why is it that in America and in England and everywhere else in the world outside of Eretz Yisrael they keep 2 days of Yom Tov, and in Eretz Yisrael it's only 1 day, except when it comes to Rosh Hashanah, and Rosh Hashanah also in Israel it's 2 days. So why is that? All of a sudden we do 2 days, and why not Yom Kippur? Right? All these things. So the answer is like this, right? Because in every month, every Jewish month can either be, right, 29 or 30 days, right? It can either be 29 or 30 days long, which means that the new month will begin either on the 31st, right, or the 30th day, right? In other words, if the previous month was 30 days, then the 31st day is already the new month. If Elul was 30 days, then the 31st day, so to speak, of Elul is already Tishrei, right? But if Elul is only 29 days, then the 30th day, right, the 30th day is already Tishrei. Okay, now how this worked in the times of the Beis Hamikdash is that they would I'm sorry, somebody maybe just speak. How it worked in the times of the Beis Hamikdash is that they would come to Beis Din, witnesses would come to Beis Din, and they would say, we saw the moon, we saw the new moon, and it looked like this, and they would cross-examine them and ask them all sorts of questions, how it looks, and where it was in the sky, and what the angle was, and then Beis Din would declare, okay, it's a new month, right? Right now, it just became the first of the month. And that could have happened at any point during the day, mind you, right? It could have happened in the morning, right? They could have found out in the morning that today was the new month. It could have happened, way late in the afternoon. That day already, from the beginning of the day, was the first day of the month. Right? Everybody hear me? But in Yerushalayim, it was proclaimed today is the first day of Tishrei, or the first day of Kislev, or Teves. And what they would do is that anybody who read the Havdil, anybody who read the Lord of the Rings trilogy, right? So the way that they let each other know, right? They would light the fires on the mountaintops, and it would go from one to the other. You know what I'm talking about? Right? Yeah. Okay. I knew it. Yeah. So the Havdil, but it's the same thing. That's really what they used to do. They used to light a torch. They used to light a fire, and then people used to see that they used to have stations that would spread out and would go throughout throughout Eretz Yisrael, and then into Chutz L'Aretz, and the word would spread that it was Rosh Chodesh. That's how they would let people know that it was Rosh Chodesh. Okay, but now what happened was like this: in Israel itself, word would spread very quickly, right? Relatively quickly, within a matter of hours or maximum, like a day. Everybody in Israel would know when Rosh Chodesh was. So by the time any Yom Tov would come up, let's say Yom Kippur is on the 10th of the month. Sukkot is on the 15th of the month. Pesach is on the 15th of the month. Shavuos is on the 6th of the month. Right? By the time any Chag would arrive, everyone in Israel would know exactly what the date was. Right? Everybody would know when Rosh Chodesh was, when they proclaimed it in the Beis Din in Yerushalayim, and they would know today is the 6th day from then, or the 10th day from then, or the 14th day to do B'dikas Chametz, right? That's what they would do. However, in Chutz L'Aretz, right, the word would not necessarily travel as quickly, right? Jews lived in the diaspora, or even in the times of Chazal, they lived all over the place. All the way from the time of the Gullus from Bayis Rishon, Jews were already living in Europe. They were living all over the place. and word would not spread as quickly. And therefore, what you could have, let's just take by Shavuos, because that's the earliest one in the month. It's the 6th day of the month. What you could have is like this. Last month, right, let's just say, it's Nisan Iyar, right, when we came to Iyar, last month, we knew when Rosh Chodesh was, right? It was on day 1, okay? Now, day 29 came and we didn't hear anything. Day 30 came and we didn't hear anything, right? So now we're automatically going to make day 31 into what? Into the next month, into Sivan. Right? Because a month never goes more than 31 days, right? But we're doing that really only misafek, because maybe yesterday was really the first. Right? Everybody hear what I'm saying? Right? We don't really know when Rosh Chodesh was. Or let's say, or we'll make the 30th day the first, but maybe it's really the 31st day. You know what I mean? So they'll make the first day into the first day of Sivan, but maybe the next day is, but they'll count that. So when they get to Vav Sivan, they don't know, is this really Vav Sivan, or is it really only Hey Sivan, and tomorrow is Vav Sivan, right? Because we didn't hear yet from Yerushalayim. We didn't hear when they made Rosh Chodesh. So what can we do? So what they do is they made 2 days of Yom Tov. And that's where Yom Tov Sheini came from. That's what happened. Because in Chutz L'Aretz, they literally didn't know when to make Yom Tov. Sometimes even for Pesach or Succah, 2 weeks, they didn't hear when Rosh Chodesh was. So they had no choice but to calculate the 2 potential days that Yom Tov could be based on, they knew already by now when last month was for sure, right? Even though last month, the whole half of the month, they may have been in a doubt also. But by the time the next month rolls around, they already knew when last month was. So by the 30th day, maybe it's already the new month. Right, the 31st day, maybe that is, and they're going through the whole month in that suffix. So that's why Yom Tov Sheini is 2 days, right? Whereas in Israel, in Eretz Israel itself, you never had this issue, right? Because everybody found out before the 2nd day of the month, or the 3rd day of the month, so it never came up that a Yom Tov had a question as to whether it was 1 or 2 days, and that's why the halacha here in Israel is 1 day, and the Chutz L'Aretz is 2 days. Now, why it is that even once the calendar is set, so that's this idea of, Minag Avosenu B'Yadenu, Al-Pi, Pshat, Al-Pi, Kabbalah, and all sorts of things, all sorts of ideas that in the Chutz L'Aretz it takes more tikkunim, it takes, whatever, there's other ideas, as to why it is, but the concept behind why the 1 day or 2 days of Yom Tov, this is why it is. Now, this answers also, it explains why Rosh Hashanah is 2 days even in Israel, right? Why is that now? Because Rosh Hashanah, even in Israel, could sometimes be questioned. Because, even in Israel, Rosh Hashanah is that day, right? In other words, so let's say for Elul, but Elul, we knew exactly when day 1 of Elul was. But now day 29 of Elul came and went, and now it's the evening of day 30. Now, it could be already tomorrow morning, witnesses are going to come in and declare that to be Rosh Hashanah. So already on the night of the 30th, they have to be making Rosh Hashanah, because maybe it is Rosh Hashanah, right? But now maybe that day is going to pass, and witnesses are not going to come, and they're only going to come the next day. You hear? On the 31st day. So in Yerushalayim itself, sometimes witnesses would come on the first day, and then there would only be 1 day of Rosh Hashanah, right? But otherwise, within Yerushalayim itself, they would keep 2 days of Rosh Hashanah for the same reason. So therefore, even once the calendar was fixed, and again, we know exactly when the first day of Tishrei is, right? We know exactly what it is, but because just like the minhag, again, this is Al-Pi Pshat, there's deeper things that are going on behind the scenes when it comes to it, but just as far as understanding the halacha is concerned, just like in Chutz L'Aretz, we have 2 days of Yom Tov for all the other Chagim, so it's exactly the same mechanism that gives us 2 days of Rosh Hashanah in Israel itself, because Rosh Hashanah itself in Israel, because it's the first of the month, was a question, and therefore here in Israel they kept 2 days of Rosh Hashanah often out of a Sunday. Okay, now, that being said, you run into now some funny issues, right, and funny questions like this. So now let's talk about Sukkah, because when you go, you keep 2 days of Yom Tov, so you keep 2 days of Yom Tov, that's fine. And when it goes through the days of Chol HaMoed, as somebody called me today who was confused because they're here in Israel and they're using and they keep by Israeli Yom Tov, but they're using an American Machzer. And if you'll notice that there's a difference, because the American Machzer, each day of Musaf has 2 days, right? Today, it didn't just have the 6th day, it had the 5th day and the 6th day. Because, right, for Americans or for Chutz L'Aretz, right, for 2 days of Yom Tov, we treat each day as, well, today, the first day is either the first day or it's not Yom Tov. The second day is either the second day or it's the first day. The third day is either, right, you know what I'm saying? So for the 2 days of Yom Tov, you're not going to do Malacha for both days, right? For Musaf, you're going to say both days of Musaf to cover yourself, to make sure. Right, everybody with me? You got so lost anybody? Okay. Right. But now, when we're coming over to Shmini Atzeres, we're running into a problem, right? Because for Shmini Atzeres, lulav and esrog are muktzah, right? If not for the fact that Yontif is Yontif, Lulav, and Esrog, or Muktzah, right? To sit in the Sukkah, yeah, to sit in the Sukkah, well, maybe you could just say, okay, it's mutter to sit in the Sukkah, so why not to sit in the Sukkah? But then you have an issue of maybe Baltosif, of adding on, doing mitzvahs too much, right? You're not allowed to eat in the Sukkah when it's not Yontif, right? You're not allowed to add on to the mitzvahs. There's an Isser of Baltosif, to add on. You know what I'm saying? So what do we do? How do we resolve the issue, right? Everybody hear what I'm saying? So what we do is like this. The halacha is in Chutz L'Aretz anyway, and this is what most people do, is on Shmini Atzeres, right, which is the Yontif, so it's broken up into 2 days, Shmini Atzeres and Simchas Torah. So Shmini Atzeres is really Shmini Atzeres, but it's also a suffix, it's also questionable, maybe it's really still the last day of Chol HaMoed, right? You hear what I'm saying? Because that day of Shmini Atzeres is either that day or it's maybe the previous day, which is still Chol HaMoed, right? So therefore, really we would move the Lulav and Esrog, we would do Lulav and Esrog, except Chazal said, no, you can't do that, because since it's Muktzah, it's like undermining the Yontif of Shmini Atzeres. You're doing something that's like a contradiction to Shmini Atzeres to pick up something that would be Muktzah. You hear what I'm saying? In other words, we treat it like it's Shmini Atzeres and maybe the last day of Sukkot, but we're not going to do something that's going to undermine the Shmini Atzeres of it. So we're not going to do Lulav and Esrog. But what about Sukkah? Right? Going to sit in the Sukkah, that doesn't undermine Shmini Atzeres in any which way. And therefore the Gemara Paskins, and this is Halacha L'Maisa, and I'm interested to see because different people do different things, but the Gemara says, and it's brought down like this in Shulchan Aruch, that on Shmini Atzeres, you sit in the Sukkah, but you don't make a bracha. You eat in the Sukkah, the meals on Shmini Atzeres, not Simchas Torah, right? Why not Simchas Torah? The Simchas Torah is already for sure outside of Sukkot, right? Simchas Torah in Israel is already a weekday, right? It's already Isru Chag here. So Simchas Torah is for sure Shmini Atzeres at best, at worst, or whatever you want to say, right? It's for sure not any longer Yontif. That's why Simchas Torah you don't eat in the Sukkah anymore in Chutz L'Aretz, right? But on Shmini Atzeres itself you eat in the Sukkah, but you're not going to make a bracha because maybe it's really Shmini Atzeres, and therefore we're not going to make a bracha because brachas we treat more seriously. And what about the question of Baltosif? What about the question of adding on the mitzvah? So therefore, you're not allowed to add on a mitzvah. What about that? So this is where it gets very interesting. So some Rishonim say, Succah shel Adam arevo alav, that no, it's pleasant to sit outside in a gazebo. It doesn't look, if I pick up a lulav and esrog, right, or do something that's very overtly, like, blowing a shofar, very overtly a mitzvah, so then that's baltosiv. That looks like I'm adding onto the mitzvah. But if I'm doing something that's anyway, it's gishmak, it's pleasant, it's nice to sit outside in the sukkah, it's nice, to sit outside in a nice airy place is nice to do. So that's not baltosiv. So based on that idea, now let me just ask a question. How many people here, if you remember, how many people here at home eat in the sukkah on Shmini Atzeres? How many people do? You remember? If you do, a lot of people do, and a lot of people don't. Right? So the people that do, you do because it says so in Shulchan Aruch, and that's what straight makes sense. The people that don't, so what they say is like this. There are different reasons that are given, but just based on what I was just explaining, what they explain is like this. For many, many years, especially the people of Ashkenaz Jews, and especially Hasidim, lived in places where it was freezing, right? In Russia and Poland, these types of places where this time of year it's freezing cold already, in the middle of the winter. And it was the middle of the winter, so you can't say Succah shel Adam arevo alav. You can't say it's pleasant to go and chill outside. Literally, right? It's pleasant to go and sit and eat outside, and that's why it's not baltosif. So they felt that to go and to eat in the sukkah and it's freezing cold is like similar to the problem of lulav and esrog, right? We don't do lulav and esrog because it's going to undermine Shmini Atzeres, right? Because it's muktzah on Shmini Atzeres. So and sitting in this sukkah, okay, what's the big deal to sit in the sukkah? But let's say it is a big deal to sit in the sukkah. Let's say it's freezing and it's snowing and it's bitter cold to sit outside in the sukkah. So then it doesn't make sense. And then if you're sitting in the sukkah, it looks funny. It looks like you're adding on to the Torah, and therefore the minhag developed that a lot of people don't do it. However, when it comes to people from Chutz L'Aretz who are in Israel, right? So again, just to recap, so for Israeli people, I had not planned on speaking about this, but I guess, okay, we spoke about it. So for people in Israel, for Israelis who keep only one day of Yom Tov, there's no question. Shmini Atzeres, this is the last night of Sukkot right now. This is the last night that we say David Hashem Ori, in Ma'ariv and Shachris. I don't know, the women, you add that after Shachris? Yeah, so tomorrow morning in Israel, it's the last time we say it, and that's and we definitely don't eat in the sukkah. From what I've seen in the posting, when it comes to people from Chutz L'Aretz, and maybe you'll let me know after Yom Tov, depending on where you go for Yom Tov, what you do. But from what I've seen is that in Israel, even people from Chutz L'Aretz should not eat in the sukkah. In other words, although again, but many people tell me that they do, and if you do, don't say, oh, my rabbi said you shouldn't. There's a different minhagim about it. No, I'm serious. There's a different minhagim about it. It's not like it's an avera. So I'd be curious. You can let me know afterwards. And if your hosts are knowledgeable, you can ask them about it. But the idea is that I've seen from even though that people in Chutz L'Aretz definitely, again, different minhagim, but the straight halacha seems to be that people should eat in the sukkah on Shmini Atzeres without a bracha, right? Again, without a bracha. But those same people, if they are in Israel, they should not eat in the sukkah. Why? Since here the norm is not to. Right, people don't eat in the sukkah on Shmini Atzeres because for us, for Bnei Eretz Yisrael, there is no inyan to eat in the sukkah anymore. So now, when a person from Chutz L'Aretz is going to go ahead and sit and eat in the sukkah, it's going to look overt. It's going to look like it's going to look very blatant and obvious, and that you're not supposed to do. So that I saw from Hoshana Rabbah. That's also if anybody doesn't know what to do, so people who ask me, I tell them not to. But again, if you're at a host or you're eating somewhere and they do eat in the sukkah or they tell you to eat in the sukkah, you definitely could, but definitely without a bracha. That's for sure. There's no question about it. Okay, that's not really what I wanted to. That's not really what I wanted to get into.